Good morning, brothers and sisters. Let's give a round of applause to Mr. Okada for his MC. That was very delightful. You woke us all up, and thank you for sharing the story. I had no idea we were more connected than I thought. It's truly a great story. Hailey is my spiritual mother. She witnessed me, and what a coincidence. We're more connected than we thought. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this beautiful weather. We know you're busy in your schedules and in your family and also in society. We know what was happening yesterday in Boston. Some of you may have participated, you are tired, but you still come here to share your morning with us. We are very grateful.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. We're very excited to be here and very honored that you're here to allow us to share experience in regards to our recent trip that we had gone on a couple of months ago. Some of you may have known that we actually went on a 2-week vacation to Europe, but a very special part of Europe. It was my husband's hometown in Albania. And it was a very deep and moving experience for the both of us, but I think especially for my husband, going back home and returning to his own family, his grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, who he hasn't seen in a very, very long time. And since then, he's gone through many different changes, such as not returning as one person, but as two individuals, as one. and we have a lot of things to share. We have a lot of experiences and a lot of pictures to show. So thank you so much for joining with us today.
Thank you. So let's see if we can pull up our slideshow. As my wife mentioned, we try to spend a lot of time to translate this trip into something that everybody can find it helpful and inspirational, and I'm sure all of you have been through this process because all of you, just like us, came to America and at one point or another you got blessed and you had to go back. So as much as this was a trip for me, visiting back my grandparents, was also introducing my wife. So this was a very memorable trip for us. So that's my hometown. It's a village. My house is right here. And it's around 150 families, very small, everybody knows everybody. That's where I got my elementary education. The school is no more there, it's fallen apart. But we are 9 villages. We're called Prespa, we're actually Macedonian ethnicity. If you remember, the First World War happened in the Balkan regions, in Serbia, Montenegro, which is, former Yugoslavian republics. And they split up the places back, during World War, and they did not ask where do you belong, what language you speak. They just arbitrarily decide where you belong for the sake of the lake or land. So I just wanted to give everybody perspective of where I traveled, where I'm coming from, so you can have an idea. That's Albania right here, which is neighbor of Greece. Italy, 2-hour away difference. Venice is right here in Italy. This is Rome, and that's where I am born, between those 2 lakes. I have literally neighbors, Greece, Macedonia, and Albania. We're only 10 minutes away from each other, so you can understand this is a very geographically important point for all these nations. And we were unfortunately left in Albania till 1989. We were a communist country, so we had no private property or anything. We were literally like North Korea. I was born in 1989, but my parents lived under a communist regime where they're asked to worship the leader of the country. No Godism is allowed or any of that type. And since we are actually Macedonian ethnicity, we will be forced many times to probably spy on our country, Macedonia, because we could understand the language. Forced many things. This is at least what my grandparents or my ancestors were asked to do.
So we're going to start this sermon off with a little quote from True Father. And it reads, "We have 2 purposes in our life. One is the purpose of our own lives. The other is the purpose of our lives in relation to others, to our family, our nation, or the whole world." by father back in February 2010, I believe. So this quote speaks very deeply with my husband and myself, because we understand that we together as a couple are living our lives in the same direction. And it's very easy to focus on ourselves, our growth in relation to our relationship, our jobs, everything that directly affects us and our happiness and success. However, that's just one part of the puzzle. The other part is what we as a couple can do for others around us. And the other part is, how do we affect our own family, our tribe that we went to visit, those around us at work, everyone in direct relation to us. And we realize that what makes us deeply, deeply happy and joyful is when we can have a positive experience and a positive infliction on others in a very good way in regards to how we treat them and how we can have that deep connection with others. So this is the beginning of our trip. And this photo here is my husband's mom and dad in front of where my husband grew up. This is his home, the entrance to his home back in his village. And the first day I stepped foot in their property, my in-laws came out to greet us. They had been there about 5 days earlier before us to prepare the house, to welcome me. And there's a big history, because that's where my husband was born and grew up. And so it holds a lot of importance for them to be able to welcome me into their home. And this photo here on the corner is one of our family dinners, just about a night immediately after we had settled there. Many of the homes are very humble, very small, but the love is very, very rich. And to have someone of my ethnicity there is something very, very different, and it's unique, but yet I was very warmly welcomed into their family. So, next slide.
So I moved to United States 9 years ago in 2008. This was the first time. I was 19 years old. I have moved after I finished high school. I had taken a year off where I spent fundraising in Korea. Part of our growth stage, at least in my country back in Albania, after we joined the movement, was that you dedicate part of your life after high school to develop your character before you go to the blessing or you take any other big important task in your life. I think it's kind of like STF here, or GPA as you call it. So after I finished my high school, I had spent a year in Korea, and I moved to the United States through the green card lottery. I was in Korea, I finished my mission, I was wondering, God, what shall I do next? And then my parents called me telling us that our name appeared on the national newspaper, that we have won the lottery to move to the United States. And that's how I moved here in the United States with my family, my mom and dad and my younger brother. We are only 2 siblings. So this was the first time returning to the United States after 9 years. So many people after they finish high school, they grow so much that they're almost unrecognizable. So visiting back my parents, not only physically, you may have changed, but in terms of mentality. So this was a big step for me going back. But even most importantly, I made myself a promise when I came to the United States, when I go back, I don't want to go the same person. I want to multiply myself, and at least bring a significant other with me. It's evolution, it's progress, and it's the most beautiful thing I can return back with me to my home country. So, as much as this was a trip for me, it was also a trip, it's like 50-50 is showing my wife the places where I grew. So this is even more memorable than just spending time with my relatives, but also spending time with my wife and revisiting the places that meant so much to me, that my wife can be part of that. So there were 3 main purposes of our trip, basically, is an introduction, introduce my wife to my tribe, to my grandparents, to my friends, is to see my grandparents. As you know, our grandparents' parents age, and their different cognitive mental state they are, and I want to go make sure that where they can recognize me and I can have a coherent discussion with them, and they can really see me before anything can happen. As we know, I'm from a third world country where the life expectancy is not as high as in America. We don't have a doctor in the village, as you saw. People eat everything natural from the farms, but once winter comes, you're stuck for 3-4 months. You don't go anywhere. You just stay there, and everything is wood. You don't have electricity or natural heating. All you have is what you make home. So anything can happen anytime. So for me, it was very important that I go when my grandparents are alive and that they can get to see my wife. And the other thing is, we always emphasize tribal messiahship. So this, I didn't want to be just a trip for us, individual level, but also vertical, where we will be able to give the blessing that was given to us by true parents and extend it to the rest of my relatives. This blessing doesn't belong to us. This happiness doesn't belong only to us, but I want to make sure that we were to give it to the rest of our tribe.
So another quote by True Father we would like to read for you. We need to make a plan, consistently develop it, and put it into practice, organize, systematize. To make strong relationships with people, make conditions continuously, especially prayer conditions. Remove walls between your heart and others. We should visit 2, 3, 4 times to give them a good impression. We need to touch their hearts. So this quote, we've really taken seriously before making our visit to Albania and visiting my relatives, because we understand that since it's been such a long time, and they really don't have a connection of heart with myself especially, but when my husband left, he was just graduating from high school, and now he's a grown man, an adult who is married. So when you visit people and you haven't had years of connection, when you see them again, oftentimes it's very hard to build upon that connection because there's just been so much lost through the years. So as a couple, we decided that we wanted to include our relatives in regards to what we've been doing in our life and make that connection with them long before we visit them, so that when we do meet with them, there's a real connection and bond between ourselves and our relatives. So True Father has emphasized, really make a plan. Don't just invest in this person just one time. We could have easily gone there and have visited each person individually for an hour, but we wanted to make this sole purpose of a trip to invest in them more than once, but twice, 3 times. The entire time we're there, we wanted to continuously invest. So we've prepared ourselves to meet with our relatives long before we have gone. Next slide.
This way.
So the main part of our preparation was, one, to really invest ourselves in regards to each other. So we understand that we are going there together as a husband and wife. So when we do go there, we want to be able to have a relationship that is worthy of showing to our relatives that this is the kind of relationship we have and what we have to offer in regards to how we came about as a couple, how we came to know each other, how we have grown our love for each other. And we find that this is the strongest way to be able to show love to our relatives, for them to know that what we have is real and a true kind of love, so that their minds can be at peace and they can be happy for us genuinely. So as a couple, we truly value our time spent with each other, because we look at it, our times together, as an investment in one another. So my husband and I are very big in regards to creating an emotional bond with each other as husband and wife. And an emotional bond is super important in any relationship, whether that's conjugal or family or brother, sister. In any type of way you look at it, when you have an emotional bond with another human being, it takes you from just 2 separate individuals living in one home to now a family, because families have experiences, they have memories, they have inside jokes, they create laughter. That is what takes two separate people or a group of people under one roof from just that to something more, like a family. So we understand that when we spend time with each other, we are investing in one another. It's not wasting money. It's not just for fun. It truly is an investment in our relationship because we are making time for one another. We are building that type of love and emotional bond with each other. So we decided to do a little bit of exploration to continue making memories and really build up on that relationship before we go and see our relatives. So what we did was before we go, of course, we took the opportunity to explore a little bit, visited Venice, visited Rome. So we spent time with each other before we have seen our relatives. So for a couple of days, our first part of our trip was to visit these places and really spend quality time with each other. And we did this because we know that when we take care of our marriage, it's our strongest testimony to other people. That is how we witness. That is how we naturally come to explain why we are the way we are and why we have what we have, because of these things that we can do with each other, and we know that God is the one that gave us these opportunities. So just a couple of pictures from the first part of our trip, first 5 days. This is a picture of us in Venice in one of the museums. One of the oldest cafes in Europe. And that is a beautiful painting of, is that St. Mark's Basilica?
It's a basilica in Venice.
Yep. And this next photo, so that's me looking onto the basilica, and I didn't realize that that's us actually standing right in front of the basilica. So it kind of puts it into perspective of where we were in regards to that time in history. And then this next slide. This has been one of my number one top bucket list item, is to be able to ride a gondola in Venice. So that's us there. This is us over a bridge, over one of the canals. And this is one of the restaurants that we had dined in on our first night in Venice. This is Rome inside the Colosseum, massive, beautiful structure. And that's us, right to behind us is the Colosseum on the outside. And this is us in front of the Pantheon. And that there is the Vatican City. Oh, yes. And
This paint, I'm not sure.
that's inside the Vatican. Oh, I guess it didn't show.
No, it didn't show.
But yeah, so those are just a few pictures we wanted to share in regards to the first leg of our trip.
And the reason why we did some of these trips is, it's not we only going back to Europe and we want to take advantage of the trip. And we have given up so much time we can take from work, which is 2 weeks. My wife moved here almost 2 years ago, and we spent time with the relatives. We don't have much time to take off, but we are really, as we try to go before our relatives visit them, we try to read True Father's words, and we always see True Father offering conditions in nature. You would see him fishing before, or you'd see him, do something that he loved. It was not just, doing bows or cold showers. So it wasn't just, let's go see these places for the sake of our visit. Everybody wants to go in Venice. I mean, I am from Europe, so I know what it is. It's not as back when it used to be. The canals are dirty and the food is kind of overpriced and all that. But we wanted to create an emotional bond with each other. We wanted to be a testimony to our relatives of how we spend our time and quality, not just how we spend our money. But it was an offering for us so that we can take these 2 days before we visit my relatives to separate ourselves from our everyday life here in America and business and work. And before we go to my relatives, and just basically give time to each other where we can reflect what we want to go, we can be at peace and calm, and so we are basically fresh and re-energized before we go to my country, because it's very nerve-wracking, and I'll share as I go on, not only visiting my relatives for the first time, but bringing a significant other. You all probably have been there. I mean, when you just want to introduce your friend to your relatives and you're nervous, what are they going to say? Imagine bringing a significant other. So we believe that it was very important for us to set the right spirit and artistic connection to create an emotional bond with relatives. So we not only believe that we should be strong as a husband and wife, but we should have a artistic connection with our relatives. So from this time that we have been together as a husband and wife, we send gifts to our relatives. Every time my parents would visit or cousins or relatives would visit, we did send them something from us. For example, we send them an electronic frame of all the pictures that we did together with my family here. So this way my grandparents, my relatives can be able to go through them and spend time looking through these pictures. We send them multivitamins, as I mentioned. This place doesn't have doctors, and life expectancy is not strong. And my grandparents, they get to the age where they need to have cataract and other medical conditions. And when we visited them, they did say that actually this multivitamin saved us. And this is due because my wife, as you know, is in fitness, and she knows one or two things about health and their importance. In my country, multivitamins are almost like medicine. You take multivitamins, you're weak. So it still needs to develop, basically. But once they started taking them, they actually did change their life, how strong they were and how better they were. And they were grateful to us. And I mentioned to them, this is your offering from my wife. And they were very touched by that. So this way we had an emotional connection. We made Skype calls with my cousins. Every time I would call them, I would introduce my wife to them. They were very humbled to meet her, even though they could not speak English. But when they see you smile, when they see you want to interact with them, they feel that. So you already create an emotional bond with them. So in one way, this is kind of like us visiting them 2, 3, 4 times from the quote it said previously, indirectly. My brothers and, my brother and my parents went to my country before me. They went like 2, 3 years in a row because of their parents, my grandparents, physical conditions, because they got to take them to a doctor or something. I was still in school, and I did not have all the resources to go in all the time. In one way, I felt my brother is representing me. So in one way, they're kind of like John the Baptist. They were delivering these multivitamins. They were delivering these pictures, sharing our stories, answering any question. Of course, Facebook. If you all are friends with my wife, you already know everything she does in our everyday life. She's the biggest proponent of Facebook. Everything you see on my Facebook is because I'm tagged to my wife. So I've learned so much from my wife, and I need to be more proactive, of course, in that manner. But they knew so much before we already went there. It saved us so much time and so much explanation. Literally. They were already like connected. I mean, they were speaking about their pictures in Venice, in Rome, and of course before that in Boston. They already knew this. They were like so anxious to hear. They were already connected in heart and emotion. So this is my parallels of history, I guess.
Of history.
So when to go and how to go is very challenging. And I moved here, when I was 19 years old in 2008, and those are my 3 years of formation stage to 2011. I got blessed at the growth stage when I was 25 years old, when I was just graduating college, and I believe that was the right time for me as I felt and as I prayed. And at the end of my perfection stage, 2017, I believe that was the right time to visit my homeland. I just realized this after reflecting, of course, but realizing when to go for me was a big challenge. When to introduce my wife to my relatives, when is the right emotional, when do I have all the right foundation? And we all know circumstances change and they may never be perfect thing, but when as I was reflecting on my life, I realized that I'm like, wow, this makes sense. This is my year to go. My wife has been with me for 2 years. We have been living with my parents. We have created an emotional bond, and this is the time to go before anything can happen to my grandparents, to organize them and offer them the blessing.
So on my end, I know exactly what my husband is going through in regards to going back, because it's a very nerve-wracking thing. He's the first person in his whole family that's doing something outside of the social norm. for someone to marry outside of the Albanian or Macedonian culture, and for someone to, let alone, take part in a religion or a movement that is different from what they've known, he faces a lot of hardships in regards to how to reach to his relatives. And so I didn't know any of that. You know, I've been blessed to be able to be free in regards to our values. I had very, very good parents who instilled those on me. However, my husband, you know, he stands in the able position in his whole tribe. And to not have that support from his own parents, I really needed to be the one to be supportive of his desire to be able to really bring God to his tribe, as he refers to them. So as a wife, you know, it's very easy to be critical. So sometimes, you know, my husband would tell me, well, my parents won't understand, my brother won't understand, or I don't know what else to do. So just to make it easier for him, I needed to be a very, very good object in regards to that relationship. And I know I need to play a part to be able to win the hearts of his relatives, whether that's a Skype call and they want to talk to me, or they're shy because their English is not good. I need to make myself available. So if someone's on the Skype, I'll sit down. I can't speak to them, but I'll say hi and I'll smile. And it's enough to really warm up their heart. And so when they see me, they can look forward to that relationship that we've had. So being supportive of my husband in that sense, being open and being willing to embrace a whole different side of a culture that I've never known or I'm nervous about, because before our relationship began, these hardships that my husband has faced really had the potential to turn my heart a little hardened in regards to how I approach my in-laws or my future relatives on that side. However, I know that we need to be the better person spiritually in regards to embracing and loving, and to be open to willingly open your heart and become vulnerable, knowing that they can be thinking something otherwise. However, we are there in a position to love. Is a tremendous effort on our parts. However, I think it was necessary so that God can really work in our relationships with our relatives when we went to visit them.
So parents have expectations of their children, and my parents had expectations of me. I'm the first person in my tribe to have ever left the country, let alone go in Asia and South Korea, because my country was under 500 years of Turkish occupation. First World War, Second World War, communism till 1989, genocide. So my parents were raised under a country there was no much freedom and there not much education, even if they wanted to have a better relationship as a husband and wife, even if they wanted to educate their children much more. But all that they learned was that sticking together, by being together, you can survive. Doesn't mean you can succeed, but at least you can survive. So I come from a culture where it's very patriarchal. You know, you listen to your parents, the husband makes the biggest decision, the wife is usually home. And this is because the economy is not so well developed. I mean, today things are different. Everybody works, women learn how to drive. But still, it's not as America. And children don't leave when they're 18 or even when they're 24, by the time they finish college, before they can go get married. You respect the sanctity of marriage. You don't date before that. You get to know people, but you always ask for your parents' blessing before you move on. Completely the opposite of the United States. I mean, here you're encouraged when you're young to go out and explore. When you're 18, right? Go out in a different college, different state, take responsibility, take loans, learn how to manage money. And then, of course, you don't have your parents next to you. Look for affection and emotional support to your boyfriend and girlfriend or friends. So it's different culture. In our culture, we believe you stick together. Blood ties and family ties are very important because at the end of the day, they are the only one who can stay next to you. They are the only one who can stay in the village, who can stay in the town next to you. You can ask for support and will put the judgment aside. So respecting that tradition was very important for my parents. Especially when they came, to America. They only knew America from the American movies, Hollywood. They thought once they come to America, they'd be having a Cadillac, They'd be walking, in a golden roads with golden spoon, but they had to work for $8 an hour, 80 hours a week, barely pay the rent and support their children, hoping they will get a scholarship or something, let alone help their parents back in my country. They saw the moral compass here is completely, especially in Massachusetts. I don't know how it is in different states, but they see the children leave their parents. They see the parents ending up in elderly care. They see the debt amount. They see the houses, how much they have to pay and how old they are, and they have to work their life for 30 years for a house when they can't support their children. But most importantly, they see the big amount of divorces happening. So my parents were scared for us, and I can only understand as a child because I'm not a parent. So for my parents, it was very important that I keep that tradition because they know that if I go back in my country, basically you respect your culture. You get married into your own culture because you know your culture, unlike America. Here, people get married 3 days, 15 days down the road, they're not anymore the same person. So my parents were very scared and worried about us, as I was as an older brother for my younger brother who was 16 years old going in college, and now he is exposed to all this technology, all these new drugs who are fun. I was very nervous because I'm in the older position as a brother. That was my responsibility. So my parents basically expected me to go back in my country when they were visiting and get married there. I was an American. I can marry anyone I wanted. But also my family was very respected back in my country because my family used to own a business. We used to know all the officials and all of that. But also we had a great character. My dad doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. We're a very hardworking family, very respected. So no matter all of that, my parents made most of their decision based on what felt right at the moment. They weren't very religious. It was all patriarchal system. We as kids could not speak up. We get yelled, we get beaten. In school, we'd always get beaten. If you had no homework, you'd be sitting for 1 hour in 1 foot at a corner, or you'd be in the underground, in the dungeon in darkness, literally, and they'll be pouring hot water over you. It was very, very old style. It was so we as young kids are grown up, it's very hard for us to talk to our parents. And I'm sure all the kids and even elderly people here, you have experiences from your parents where sometimes it's hard to go back and talk to them. So that was the biggest difference, and I decided to go through the blessing process because that's where God was involved. That's the reason why I got witnessed when I was 16 years old by Hylis. And I knew that if I want to have a better relationship than what my mom and dad have and what my tribe has, I had to go through the process of a blessing. So these challenges that I faced with my parents, this new introduction of life, bringing this peace, in one way I had to be very conservative and not say too many things at the beginning, because I know that all of us have a process of indemnity and suffering to go through. But for me, it was not just a battle, but winning the war. So going back to my country, it was very stressful and emotionally challenging for me because for the first time ever, I'm bringing my significant other, who they never knew where Philippines is. They have no idea. They have no idea about some of this background. They're very nervous from what they see on TV about America. So I basically was on a double-edged sword. One is bringing my wife and relatives. The other side is, giving the blessing and how to organize all of that.
They still think I'm actually Mexican, by the way.
If she gets more tanned, they probably think she's Peruvian or something. So this trip was even of a greater meaning for me because I was introducing a concept that never existed before in my family. And deciding when to go and how to make the right preparations. And I always pray, God, what shall I do? Because you want to, your vulnerabilities come up, your fallen natures come up. You're like, shall I organize this blessing, holy wine ceremony? Shall I just go one by one and visit them every night? What shall I do? Shall I just go one day and just run away? Basically, all your egoistic nature comes up, all your weaknesses. You lose confidence in yourself. But you have to remind yourself that if this is just for you, then you take the easy road. But this is something more significant than you go ahead and give them the blessing. So after praying, I decided that we should go, if we go big or we just go back home. So we decided to have a big dinner for everybody. So this was not just us sharing time with my significant others, but they get the chance to come from all over outside of Albania and Macedonia to see each other. So this was a very, very happy trip that we get the chance to do, and give them the holy wine, and we will share the pictures to illustrate that.
So as you can probably guess, on top of the nervousness, it's like it's almost like being on a first date with 500 people, because you're under the microscope, you look different, you act different, you wear yoga pants where everyone else are wearing long dresses. It's like, it's a very, very different culture and social norm altogether. But I learned two words in Macedonian, just 2 words, and I say one word meaning hello, and in their language, and it's almost like one thing after another, thinking they were so happy that I took that time to just learn 1 or 2 words. And and I was nervous, of course, of how my relatives will respond to me. But within, I think a day or 2, it's almost like I've known them my whole life. They're hugging me, they're kissing me, they want me to sit, they're talking, telling me stories, and I'm just nodding, But they truly were so happy, and really, and I could really feel the love from my relatives. And I really think, especially for those of our members here who have had this type of barrier and have had to love your own relatives, Japanese, American, Korean, you can understand the difficulty. But yet, Father has trusted us that this is the way to establish peace. And I could really feel it when I got exposed to it firsthand, because there were absolutely no barriers, just language, but we got around it because our love was so much stronger, and that came from foundation of investing in them before we even saw them. And so I knew that my husband had this battle to fight, and I wanted to be supportive, because we may not win them over and make everyone unificationist. And I really don't think that's what Father's goal is. But I really think Father's goal is to be able to see peace and unity, and create a deeper sense of relationship, and just have God as a part of that process. And I think, if anything, that's a process that we can be proud of to share with our relatives.
And the biggest challenge, at least for me, was myself. I mean, I feel God made all the preparation. He took all the people to be present there, all of my relatives. He gave us the time for me and my wife to spend all this time together in the United States, to get to know each other, blessed us with job, blessed us with a great community, blessed us with opportunities to go to get educated in different workshops, to only go back and for me now to question whether I have enough what it takes to give my blessing to my relatives. Basically, the only obstacle was myself and my immaturity. Not trusting enough that I can overcome this, and wondering whether my parents will accept my wife and the decision I made, even though all of my life I made all the right decision compared to all of my cousins, and everybody looks up to me for advice. We always are nervous because it's natural, it's something new, and we as human beings, because of the fall, we always are scared of the unknown. And this was unknown for us. I have grown up, they have no idea how have I changed, who is my wife. This was all unknown, how we're going to react. Am I still going to eat my grandma's soup with just oil, salt, pepper, and chicken? Or do I want a fancy American steak? What about my wife? She's the American Hollywood with polished nails and yoga pants that I've never seen before. It's all, basically we have all these pre-existed thoughts of what an event should be expected like. But we basically was just a connection of heart, talking to them. And they got to see actually the relationship we had, how I took care of my wife, how she responded back to me, to my cousins around there. So I basically was, the only obstacle was myself and my lack of immaturity in terms of my faith and the knowledge of how to relate with other people. But everything else was basically prepared by God, and I was very grateful that my wife was there to support me. She was very, very humble to talk to all of my relatives, and it went very, very well.
So moving on, before we go into their pictures, we knew that the next step would be to conduct this holy wine blessing. And it's been something that we've been talking about, would shove under the rug because we didn't think it was feasible. We don't know how to break it down so they can accept it, because they're very, very strongly Orthodox Christians. They follow everything to the T in regards to going to church, only believing in that and nothing else. So it was something that we looked at. Can we do it? We don't know how, so we didn't talk about it. But we knew that we had to make this trip more than just seeing our relatives. We wanted to be able to still give them the blessing in any way that we knew how. So we'll definitely touch on that. So before we do, here's just a couple of pictures. This is where my husband and I stayed. It's a little hotel resort in Macedonia. The hotel is behind us. Macedonia is such a rich country in nature. They're surrounded by lakes, greenery, mountains. And that's the lakeside in front of our resort. That's us early in the morning. We went there a few times to do hundoke by the lake. It was just perfect. And that's the front yard. So here in this top left corner, this is a place called Saint Naum. It's a very, very religious monastery in Macedonia. And there are 2 occasions every year where a lot of Macedonians will meet and gather in that place right there. And this next one here, the picture in the upper middle, that's my husband and I with my husband's friend that he actually did a mission with when he was younger, high school years. And that's STF Europe on our boat with us. We didn't know that my husband's friend, who is now holds a certain position as a church leader, was hosting STF Europe. And I knew some of these kids. I didn't know some of these kids, but I knew some of their brothers and sisters who were older. So my husband and I, and me having done 3 years of SDF and my husband having done 2 years of missionary work, we know how hard it is for them to be doing this every day. So we decided to take them out on a little trip. We rented a boat, took them around, fed them lunch, gave our testimony, and really tried to take care of them, in a way to say, good job, keep doing what you're doing.
Too bad 2 of them were fasting. But
yes, 2 of them were fasting. I felt so bad. But we treated them with ice water. That top right corner picture, this is us in Skopje.
Yeah, the capital of Macedonia.
The capital of Macedonia. That is the statue behind me of Alexander the Great. And as you know, Alexander the Great is Macedonian, despite the Greeks claiming that he is Greek, he is actually Macedonian. And this bottom picture right here, that's my husband with his cousins, and this is the balcony overlooking mountains and fields of grapes, onions, whatever you can plant in a garden. But this is actually the view from my grandmother's house on my husband's side. And even though there were cows and horses and it smelled everywhere, I had never felt more peaceful, and I truly enjoyed coming here every day to visit with his grandmother and to just enjoy a cup of coffee together. It was really, really magnificent. And so this picture here is us with my husband's grandmother on his mother's side.
Yes.
And she really took care of us. And she and her husband, who has now passed away, has been a very, very central religious figure in their village. So again, when my husband says people looked up to their family, it's because of his grandparents and what they have done in regards to being the central religious couple in that village. And so she really, really took good care of us.
Yes, and we unfortunately did not make it to see my grandfather. He passed away 2016 before we went there. All of a sudden, I think, and one of the reasons is because medicine is so bad, they gave him too many cocktails of many wrong things and did not make it. But my grandparents and my ancestry, I believe I'm here because of them on my mother's side. They used to live in a monastery, and my grandmother would always get visions to go clean up the monastery, and she would just go by herself. Nobody lives in the monastery right now, everybody lives in the village, but everything was owned by the government, and my grandfather would be in charge of the fish on the lake, so people would look up to him. But I believe I'm here because of their great significance. They do believe in God. My grandma still goes to church every Sunday, even though they never read the Bible because the government would never allow them. Because of communism times, she will still go, hiding and go to church. My mom still today, every Sunday she will be home. She lights a candle, even though that's their limited understanding of religion. Because on communism you're not allowed. So, but they understand the spirituality of it. So that's why it's hard to talk to them about expanding their horizon. So you basically have to talk to them horizontally and emotionally and bring things little by little. But she understands the significance of treating people nicely and living for the sake of others. She's a true example.
So this, I don't know how to do
It's my
that.
grandfather's grave on the left.
Yes, that's my husband's grandfather, my grandfather's grave. They're just fixing it up now, but so again, he is a very, very central figure type of role in this village. And many people come to pay their respects to my grandfather's grave. So we know that it was a very important opportunity for us to go there. And even though we couldn't give him physically the holy wine, we still went there, took a little bit of holy wine with us, offered a prayer, poured it on his grave. And though we said a prayer in English, I really feel that it in regards to my relatives who was there with us and they witnessed us praying over this grave, it was something of a very spiritual experience on their part to have to witness their grandson returning and offering a prayer on their grandfather's grave. So it was a very important turning point in regards to our visit there. That middle picture there is my mother-in-law in the brown dress and her sister in the next to her.
Left, yeah.
And over here is my father-in-law in the pink shirt with his brother, youngest brother. And this is us having dinner, being serenaded during the dinner. It was really, really fun. And this picture here, that's me with my other aunt, who she was one of the people who absolutely, I guess, adored the both of us, and she just couldn't get enough of us. So I think that picture kind of illustrates that very much, and that's her husband in the white shirt.
That's my mom's sister, and she was married in another village. That's where not after elementary school, I would always go and have lunch with. So she would see me most of the time. So she was very emotionally connected to me because her daughter is 1 year younger than me. So me and my cousin, we were in the same high school, basically 1 year younger, and we were on the same footsteps. I asked her, to join our, my movement and learn about the blessing and all that stuff. So literally, we could be where we are right now, but she decided to go another way. She decided to go with her friends. She wanted to be more social. She was interested in this type of meaning in life and questions and how to, expand her horizon beyond just life in Albania. So, but we are right now. She's there. She's married. She has a child. She's a very mature lady. But the point is, we were in the same high school. We're at the same time, and we could have been a great disciple for my tribes. But unfortunately, she did not follow me all the way through. So this is for my aunt. Very understands that a lot because she can see the type of marriage I have, the type of blessings I have in my life, and the type of relationship I have with my parents. And every time I go talk there, I talk about unity, and I talk to them about they're all construction men. I talk to them about being together and being united. She can see that, and she knew that Valentina, that's her name, she could have had that. She could be me, even better. but she did not follow or stay united with me. And that's why it's very meaningful when we went back there, and still me not looking down on them, but actually showing humbleness. Okay.
Not working.
Can we go next slide? Okay. So these are some of the other pictures. When we went back in my country, I wanted to show my wife, my friends we did mission with. These two are my friends. We did a 40-day mission in Albania. We're the first team. I was 17 years old to ever go all over my country in 40 states. And I was with them also in Korea fundraising. He is blessed in Ukraine with a sister. They have two twins. She is blessed with a Japanese. They're both in Albania. And this is a blessing ceremony being conducted in my country, capital of Tirana. This is another brother I was mission with. He's from my home state. They were conducting the blessing ceremony in my country. So it was very important, I think, for my wife to get to see all of this. As we know, in Albania, you have seen it on the news. She is very active. These are part of the pictures from the dinner. My brother, this is me and my wife. Again, that's my brother, very tall, taller than me. I think some of you have seen him. I think he has come to a workshop, or actually New York, for True Mother's speech. These are some of our relatives.
It really felt like a wedding. We received so many gifts, so many flowers, and this bouquet just doubled and doubled with each family that arrived to the dinner. So we were very spoiled, and we felt so blessed to be able to have that. This is that other photo. My husband's cousins. That's Christina and Martin. They're siblings. They were just a riot. They were so fun, and we were teaching each other English and Macedonian. And over here, some more relatives, my father-in-law's brother and his wife and daughter.
Yeah, there are three brothers. This is the middle brother, my uncle.
Some more cousins.
More people arriving. Everybody looks like it's having a good time. My parents, can we turn the lights off for this one? Can we have the lights off? Whoever is in lights in church. As you can see, my grandfather, he's a Boston fan. He's wearing the Boston hat. And this was a time where I was delivering the speech. I was delivering the speech about my wife, my significant other, the meaning of our relationship, and what they were having in front of them, the holy wine. And that's where I'm explaining about the holy wine they're having in their hand, who should be taking it first and who should be taking it second. And of course, speaking more. And this is where we are offering the prayer. Everybody is asked to stand up. People are still, sitting behind the chairs. We actually, during the prayer, we even had the waiters take the holy wine. So we forgot about the camera, because everybody was taking the holy wine. The camera, nobody was taking pictures. So some of the main pictures where I was speaking or my wife was speaking, were taking the holy wine. Nobody was manning the camera. So that's where we are offering the prayer. I'm asking everybody to stand up, and where we are praying. That is the holy wine. We actually conducted the holy wine. We were, as you mentioned, we were in Vatican, and even though my relatives are Orthodox, they don't understand Vatican very much. We took these small souvenirs from Vatican with the images of course,
They're
Jesus.
meant to hold holy water.
Yeah.
But we decided holy wine was better.
So this way, this is a souvenir for them. They can just have instead of an empty glass. So this way they can just keep it in their house and remember us. And that's where everybody's taking the holy wine. They're holding it. And I guess that's where my wife is sharing a few words, and I'm translating. That's where my father is welcoming everybody and wishing us happiness and everybody to enjoy the night. And as you know, I shared that this was an emotional, trip for me because of my challenges I had with my parents in terms of breaking this huge tradition of not going back to my country but deciding to follow God in terms of my marriage and my call, something my parents could not understand. And as I mentioned, during that challenge, when I went through my blessing, one of my principles in life has been never say anything to my parents until I become a parent myself. Because all the children that are here, a second generation, every time my parents tell us something, they tell us, you're not a parent, you have no idea. So one of my principles in life has been never say anything to my parents until I'm at a parent stage. And always have taken, every time my parents would say something, I've never had responded back. Of course, this has to do with the way I was raised. It's very hard for me to talk back. But no matter all of that, my parents decided to come with us, and actually they paid for all of this. So in one way, we felt that God can work through this offering by my parents to pay for this dinner, so that this was even a greater victory. We didn't have to just organize it ourselves and orchestrate it ourselves, but my parents made the calls. We invited people, but they actually offered to pay for all of this. There's just more pictures from the evening. Of course, if you know anything about the Mediterranean culture, they dance. Everybody's in a good mood. Everybody was happy. My cousin is actually a singer there and in an orchestra, so he has a great voice. He volunteered to bring his,
guitar.
The keyboard, whatever it's called,
or a mandolin.
and play for us. So everybody's in a happy mood. They want to stay all night. This is some small video clips of dancing. I don't know if you can show them, but
do they work?
Doesn't. It's okay. I can show them. They're just, I think, 10 seconds. We don't want to put too many videos. Yeah, they're like only 40 seconds.
Not even 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Your dad is up there.
And you can hear the voice of my wife in the background.
This is my father-in-law dancing. It's an 8-second clip, but he was quite a dancer.
He's dancing with his.
That's it.
His sister is here in New York, and as you know, as an immigrant family coming to the United States, it's not easy to go back to a third world country such as Albania and collect all the resources necessary. So it was emotional for him to see his nieces and nephews. So he wanted to spend time with them and dance with them and show these pictures to his sister, to my aunt. So it was, as again, we wanted to go there, have a horizontal relationship, but also we wanted to have a vertical relationship, not just have this a personalized dinner just for us, but everybody can have a good time and get to know each other. This is a picture of all of my tribe before people were more arriving. So there you see my grandparents. On my dad's side, my grandma, my grandfather. That's Valentina I was talking to you about. I was in the same year. She was 1 year younger than me. And more cousins. Basically, I would say that we were, the next morning, I never slept any better than that night. It was such a great sleep. I was overjoyed the amount of love we received and how my wife was perceived and received. And everybody opened their houses, their doors, and respected us. I was very happy that we were able to share this blessing with them. But I also have to share that going back and realizing this poor country and poor village and seeing their lives, how poor they are, how men treat their women and how they treat their children. In one way I felt, here I'm offering the holy blessing to them, but what about tomorrow and after tomorrow? They're going to go back to the same way they're living their lives. Men still not supporting their wives to get a car and learn how to drive, or go to and get education better than theirs, or support their children. They support their sons better than their daughters. I wish I could say more to them, but I didn't want to say too much and feel judgmental, but at the same time, the question I had was how much, how can we make this a lifestyle? We all know the story of, John the Baptist giving the blessing to Jesus, the holy water, and we all know about the holy wine. We have given it to so many people, right? But as you can see, here I'm standing with my wife. Some of you have never met my parents, or my brother. They're not here. Also back in my culture. So how can I translate this blessing? So for them, it's not about making them unification. It's about bringing God in their life. Giving them this great teaching that we have so they can live a happy life, that God can be present in their lives. So I did feel, even though accomplished for that night, that first stage, I felt like there is so much more that we have to do, and the only person that stands on that way is myself and my thoughts that, they'll never understand me, it's too late. So as much as I felt at peace, on the other side I felt I have to do so much more work. I have to find ways. I have to create associations to work with Ambassador for Peace back there, or even here locally. We're still living with my parents, but I don't think I'm being that proactive with my parents or my other tribe. I have a great tribe in Ross, in the West Roxbury. We are 5-6 families. So giving them the holy wine, we all know the significance spiritually it means, but turning it into a lifestyle of becoming a blessed family is a totally different thing. I know that, but I felt at peace that knowing that God can work, because we were able to stand up confidently, giving them the holy wine. Through that small foundation, He can work maybe generations later. Maybe Valentina's son, we were actually in the baptizing of her son the next day after our dinner. Maybe he can pick up on this holy wine he received, or holy juice for him. And the rest of the cousins, that we still have a way to go. Unfortunately, generation may be lost, their parents, but God can work through this small foundation.
So we're going to end with a couple of quotes. First one is, a child of filial piety is someone who desires that his parents' situation should be solved before his own. So I think what my husband just reiterated is the fact that his desire is not going to be settled until he sees something better for his own parents. And I think we all have felt that in one way or another. When you're young, you don't really understand how much your parents have given. But now we know that our parents, we're mature enough to understand that everything they've done is for our happiness. So although my father and my mother-in-law may not be 100% understanding of why we do what we do, why we're at church today and not at home with them, that's going to come in time, but they've done everything they can because they truly do love us. And now my husband and I are at that stage where nothing will make us more happier than if we can do more for our own parents. And I think that's where this yearning to do more for our relatives is coming from. And lastly, the family is a point where God's love can be connected to mankind. Therefore, the family becomes the base for the realization of heaven. And I think that can speak for itself. When we focus on our family, our relationship with each other, that is a starting point of where God and the kingdom of heaven can start.
So, brothers and sisters, we hope that our journey was a memory for you about your past, a learning curve, or we hope we were able to give some small advice of what we did can be helpful to you and your families and your tribes. We have much more longer way to go in terms of our growth and our connection in establishing tribal messiahships in our family, but really wanted to share this experience with you. It was a great journey for us. It was a memory to remember. It was a victory for us. We are much connected and closer tribe today than we were 2 years ago when I got blessed to my wife. And we are much happier, much respected. And I really hope and wish that every one of you here can be able to stand on that level and even better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's pray. Dear God and true parents, Good afternoon. We are very grateful, Heavenly Parent, to be standing here as a husband and wife in front of our congregation, our brothers and sisters, Heavenly Parent. And we really, Heavenly Parent, want to offer this sermon to you. And we hope, Heavenly Parent, you can work through our sermon we offer today, Heavenly Parent, to answer some of the questions to our brothers and sisters here, Heavenly Parent. We're very grateful to all that you do for us, Heavenly Parent. You're always unconditionally loving us, Heavenly Parent, and you always keep forgiving us no matter our mistakes and our shortcomings, Heavenly Parent. We pray that you'll accept our week and guide us for the next upcoming week, Heavenly Parent. We are very grateful that yesterday we had a successful, Heavenly Parent, peaceful rally right here in front of our community, Heavenly Parent, Boston Church. And really, Heavenly Parent, we're praying that no matter the difficulty this nation is facing, Heavenly Parent, as we are seeing every day on the news, there are more and more division. We pray, Heavenly Parent, that we as blessed families can stand up and open your way so that you can work, Heavenly Parent. We're very humbled, as always, and grateful, and ask consistently, Heavenly Parent, for your guidance on how we can be men and women of character, men and women of faith, standing 100%, Heavenly Parent, connected with you and your true parents, and especially how we can fulfill our responsibility before, Heavenly Parent, 2020. Please guide us and accept this prayer together with my brothers and sisters in our name, Spase and Cathy and Kace, a blessed couple. Adieu.
Adieu.
Thank you, everyone.